Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I'm Curiosity, and this is my jamboree, a firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. Tonight, we spin tales of solicitous syringe-wielding strangers, a situation no customer service training can prepare you for, and a lurker in the quarry. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, make sure LED lanterns are set to red so you don't ruin your night vision, and let's begin. Our first story is from r/Creepy Encounters, shared by Gingivitis. Before I begin, this encounter happened about 10 years ago. I was 22 years old, and I'm well aware this was a very poor judgment call on my part. My parents always taught me to help someone in need, just not necessarily to the extent that I did. Up until this point, I didn't have much of a reason not to trust people who may not always have good intentions. I've also had an unreasonably difficult time saying no to people my whole life, and have since had the help of a therapist to be better about that. I've only told this story to a handful of people, because I truly am ashamed of my actions, and potentially putting my daughter's life in danger. I was on my way to an event of some kind with my 3-year-old daughter when I realized I'd left something behind in my apartment. I was close enough to home that I decided to turn around and head home. As I was pulling into the parking lot of my apartment complex, a woman was walking kind of in the middle of a driving area and began waving me down. I pulled up next to the woman and rolled down my window about a third of the way. She gave me this story of how she works at the nearby nursing home, and she'd run out of gas on her way to the gas station, and was asking for directions to the gas station. I didn't think much of the fact she was roaming around in my apartment complex, because it was pretty common for people to cut through it, sat between 2 main roads, and avoids traffic lights. I gave her directions for a 5-minute walk to the gas station, but she mentioned that she was pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well. I tried telling her I was in a hurry and assured her it was a very quick walk, but she begged. At this time she noticed my daughter was in the back seat. She had a look of surprise that I didn't think much of at the time, and she began talking to my daughter and made her laugh. She turned back to me and asked one last time if I could just drive her to the gas station. At this point I just gave in. I let her in my car, and she almost immediately asks if I have any money she can use. My heart sank at that point, realizing she was probably lying and just wanted to lie her way into some cash. I was honest with her, and told her I was broke and also didn't carry cash on me. She pointed out another resident in the complex and asked me to drive her to them. In my mind, there was still a slight possibility she needed gas, but didn't have the funds for it. So I drove her to the other person, and she rolled down my window, asking for money. They said no, and she pointed out another person. At this time, I told her I really had to be somewhere, and couldn't keep helping her. I drove her closer to the other person, but far enough she would have to get out of my car to talk to them, which thankfully she did. Once she got out of my car, I sped off and drove to my destination. I told my mother about this story, and a week later she sent me a clip from the local news. The news mentioned a woman who would approach people asking for a simple favor, which led her to asking them for money. If these people said no, she pulled out a syringe or needle of some kind and would threaten to stab them with it, and did end up stabbing them on one occasion. I looked at the image of the person and instantly recognized, this is the woman that was in my car. I know these types of people don't have much of a conscience, but I truly believe the fact that my daughter being in the car that day is what kept that woman from stabbing me. It sounds like a lucky escape for both you and your daughter. Probably a good thing she got caught. I only hope she got the help she seems to have sorely needed. Our next story was shared by rblchld in r/Let's Not Meet. Be advised, this story contains some non-graphic mentions of domestic abuse. When I was 21, I lived in a small city in the Midwest. At the time, I had no car, a bicycle, and hardly enough money for the public buses. I worked at a retail battery lighting and repair store. I worked full-time and only lived a little over a mile from my job. Since I was female in a male-dominated field, I was often used to targeted abuse from men that thought that they knew better. Many times I stood my ground and flaunted my knowledge in subjects that these men couldn't grasp. Because of my willingness to learn and my close proximity to work, I often worked all sorts of hours, mostly by myself. This time I wasn't the person closing, and had a co-worker, Joey, who came in for a part-time shift after he wrapped up classes at the local college. We had a close friendship, and we often stood up for each other, and stood in when we were flustered or needed to go to the bathroom in the back. Joey received a phone call for a possible repair on a smartphone, possibly LG low-tier phone though, and he wasn't 100% sure if it was a phone that we could repair. He asked the young female caller to stop by for a consult. She quickly agreed and said that she would stop by at around 5:30. This was a night that I was supposed to get done at 6 and catch the bus at 6:12. It was a windy, drizzly, early fall night. I remember this because I had my bike with, and it was becoming my anchor that night. A little before 6 p.m, this frantic, terrified, bawling 19 or 20-something-year-old woman came into our tiny shop. I was at the counter, switching out aging price tags and general store maintenance. I looked up at her, confused and willing to help. She looked me deep in the eyes, asking if Joey was here. At the time, he was pooping in our tiny bathroom in the back, so I had to step in and help out any customers. I told her that he was currently busy, and that I was willing to help her. She handed me her smashed, cheap phone very timidly. My customer service skills couldn't prepare me for what she was going to say next. She quietly told me that her boyfriend, who was out in his red mini truck in the small front parking lot, had gotten angry and smashed her phone when she tried to call her sister that afternoon. I took the backing off the phone and tried to research the model for any possible screen repair. No results found. I tried to hand her back the destroyed phone, and she pushed it back in my hands with a pleading look. Then the honking commenced. There was this light drizzle outside, so our front glass door was covered in beaded drops, and was slightly fogged over. I couldn't see who was honking out there. I told her again that I couldn't help, and for her to try our cell phone repair competitor down the road. The tears really started to flow down her cheeks, and I was freaked out at this point. She kept throwing glances behind her, and the honking would not stop. I shook with fear and rage at this point. I myself was in a domestic abuse situation at the time, and I knew what this girl was experiencing. I broke my locked stare at her, and tried to look in our system a second time for a replacement screen. Nothing again. I looked up from our computer and saw a shadowy figure of a young man pacing in front of the store. I was just happy that the honking stopped, but I was increasingly shaken up. My whole body vibrated with fear, and I whispered across the counter if she needed me to call 911. She slammed her hands down on the counter and said that I couldn't do that. She begged me not to. At this point, Joey came out from the back and asked me what all the honking was from. We had a lot of customers that would for various reasons honk their horns for us to pick up heavy battery cores from their cars. He thought that it was one of those situations, but with the looks on our faces he knew something horrifying was happening. The young guy stopped pacing outside and began banging on our front door. Joey took the girl's phone from my hands and said for me to go in the back and lock the back employee-only doors. I did what I was told and grabbed my bag, my bike, and my jacket. I looked at the clock in the back, and it read 6:14. I'd spent 15 minutes with this girl, both of us feeling like trapped animals. Joey did bodybuilding during his free time and was a gentle, non-confrontational, short but stocky Asian guy. I was a short, obese, kind lady that would respond one of two ways, like a doormat, or ready to stand my ground. I knew that I couldn't fight a customer, and neither could Joey, not because of physical reasons. We'd lose our jobs, and had no idea what to do. The young guy threw the door open, and the wind kept the door open. He had this manic, hateful look about him. A total predator he was. He was slim but muscular, early to mid-20s, and was soaked by the rain. He took the broken phone off the counter, and took the girl in tow. He hurled insults at us, and I gave the girl a pitying look. He slammed the door back shut, and both Joey and I stood in absolute silence. He snapped out of it, and ran to the front door and locked it. I told Joey to call our manager from our store landline, and stood around while he did. I noticed that the guy had moved his truck to directly in front of our door. He was watching us from his truck, watching us behind the counter as we were on the phone with our manager. I had to leave to get home. The last possible bus came at 6:42, and I couldn't pedal my way home in the weather, and all of the circumstances that had just occurred. The time was around 6:18, and I just needed to cross the busy highway and down the sidewalk by an eighth of a mile to the nearest bus stop. Joey, the guy, and I played the waiting game. It was 6:23 when the dickhead finally left our parking lot. I told Joey that I would leave at 6:25 so I could arrive at the stop safely. Joey opened the front door, and I threw myself on top of my bike and pedaled harder than I could ever have imagined. Now, mind you, our store was in an industrial shopping area at the very edge of town. We worked next to a sub shop and across from a strip mall with a bullseye store and a local chain grocery store, with other retail stores and a bank all in that large lot. It started to downpour, and as I tried to pull out of our parking lot, straddling my bike, I caught a glimpse of the red truck looping around the sub shop. The highway had dual lanes each way, and I had to play real-life Frogger if I wanted to make it to my destination in one piece. There were a few cars that slowed for me as I hauled ass to the other side of the road. I jumped off my bike and threw it on top of the curb. I promptly hopped back on and tried to pedal off. My front wheel was stuck in the grassy strip, and my right foot had slipped off the pedal. My shin struck the pedal, and I had to act quickly. I grabbed the frame of my bike and jogged awkwardly to the bus stop. The red truck pulled into the bank parking lot, which I had just passed. The truck pulled around and went out through the entrance across from the sub shop, and took the closest lane to me. He went at a crawl and turned at the right light, so he could circle the main parking lot of the shopping centre. There were 3 ways to get into that parking lot. One to the left, one in the centre, and the other far to the right next to the grocery store. I stuck to the sidewalks, since it felt safer, and was in front of people. The truck patrolled the parking lot, the hunter stalking its prey. I felt cold, sore, and cornered just like an injured animal. There were a couple of cars that pulled into the left entrance of the parking lot, stopping the truck from re-entering the lot. I almost collapsed in the shitty small bus stop, and just felt my phone buzz. I saw that it read Joey, so I rested my bike to answer the call. Joey told me that he was watching, and even though he had an elderly couple in the store that he was helping, that he wouldn't allow the guy to hurt me. I started to cry. All of this had just gotten to me. The red truck looped around once again and again. I saw the bus pull up early at 6:39, and I couldn't be happier. I knew the driver since I used the buses to get around town errand shopping and to get to and from work. I had my stupid bike to worry about. I hung up the phone with Joey and put my phone in my jacket pocket. I strapped down my bike in the rack that was in the front of the bus. I struggled since I was shaking and my bike was slick from the rain. I got on the bus and turned to the open bus doors and saw that the truck took a left at the center entrance of the lot. I could finally let my guard down. I sat at the front of the bus and my hands shook hard trying to get the $1.25 for the fare. The driver said that it was okay and that I could take my time with the change. I kept my backpack on and pulled my damp phone from my pocket. I phoned Joey to let him know that I was fine, and in under 15 minutes I made it to my apartment safe, but deeply disturbed. I took my bike in so it wouldn't draw any attention to where I lived. All of this gave me an idea to leave my own domestic abuse situation, a few months later, when COVID took the world by storm. To this day I wonder about that girl, and hope that somebody more daring and stronger than me called the cops on her abuser, that she had the strength to leave that violent man, for her to write her own story, and to recover from all of it. I'm currently doing significantly better in life, and finally have my own car, and I live a couple of states away, safely from my past life. It's wonderful to know you're doing better now. It takes a fair deal of both resilience and luck to get out of relationships like that, and all I can say to those still in one, you're not alone, and never give up hope. Our last story was sent to me directly by JJ. 20-some years ago now, my friends and I, all kids, in a loose sense, between the ages of 16 and just about 18, were on a camping trip in the woods around our town. It was going to be the last time we all got to hang out for a while, because the oldest one of us, Derek, would be in college out of state by the end of the summer. He promised to keep in touch, and not forget about us while he was all grown up and we were in high school. For what it's worth, and I know it's nothing to do with the story, Derek's still a good buddy of mine, and we're all still in touch. But I know, at least I thought it was possible he'd grow out of the group once he was in college, studying hard and getting girlfriends and all that. We'd camped in these woods before, but the woods were actually pretty big, so the camping we'd done before was close by. As in, if you walked for about a minute, you'd see the lights from the town. In 5 more minutes, you'd hit what passed for the town's main road. So we all knew how to camp. We all knew the area, and we'd all definitely wandered most of the woods in our time. But this was the first time we were going deep enough that the town was significantly far away. We decided to get to a place we all called Murray's Hill, but that's really a name only the locals use. Calling it a hill isn't that accurate. The land does rise, but at the top there's just a pretty flat area. And oh, did I mention it overlooks a ravine? Well, actually an old aborted quarry, probably from at least the 19th century. It's all overgrown now, and except for the lack of a waterfall or any other things that could have carved it out, you might think it was a natural part of the landscape. Anyway, the edge of it was high up, and it was clear of trees around there. Because we were so far from town, we'd have a great view of the night sky. My friend Terry was that one friend everyone should have who knows all the stars and constellations and can point out which planets are where right now. It was also clear of the trees, so it was fairly safe to have a small bonfire. Look, it was our last camping trip as far as any of us knew. We wanted a bonfire, stories, maybe a coming-of-age adventure where we explored our deepest wishes and fears, all that. We got most of that, and something a lot weirder. As we were setting up camp, I spotted something odd as I was staring down into the old quarry. I wasn't staring in a gazing into the void kind of way, just zoning out a little. Hey, we had ADD back then too. And my attention was grabbed by some bright colours. Usually it's just an overgrown mess of brown and green and grey down there, but I saw some really fluorescent colours. I mean like high-vis colours, and that was the idea that came into my head. Was someone down there? I kind of leapt back because I didn't want them to see me, which I know was weird. We weren't doing anything wrong by being there. But then I stepped forward again. Whatever it wasn't moving. I grabbed Derek and we moved around the edge a little to get a better view. Though it was early evening, there was enough light to see that there was someone down there. There was a jacket with high-vis strips on it, and it looked like it was being worn. There was definitely either a hand or some messed-up skin-colored glove from the Patagonia Caucasian flesh range. If it sounds weird to you that I'm using vague terms to talk about something I should remember very well, yes, it is weird. But it's not because I don't remember, and it's not because I'm building dramatic effect. By the time we got down there, look, it was 2002. One of us had a cell phone, and there were no bars this far from town. Going down into the quarry to check it out was easier than running into town with what might have been no emergency at all. We were risking wasting 10 minutes of careful descent to wasting several people's at least a couple of hours. By the time we got down there was no sign of the jacket or who was wearing it. Every time Derek and I tell this story to the rest of the gang, we both say how we wish we'd spoken to one other person to keep an eye out from above. But we didn't want to spook anyone, so we made up some excuse for going down there. I don't exactly remember. Probably just for shits and grins, or to see if anything interesting had been dumped. On our way back up, Derek and I talked it through. We both definitely saw the bright yellow colour and the reflective strip. We both saw that it was on a coat or jacket. We both saw that it looked like there was someone wearing the jacket. We saw the hand coming out of the sleeve. There were a couple of ways up and down the quarry, but nothing that quick. Nothing we wouldn't have seen on our way down. If there'd been someone lying there and they'd got up and climbed out of the quarry, there was no way we wouldn't have caught a glimpse of them. We were using the easiest way up or down, so the odds were good they'd have passed us. The two conclusions were, there was nothing down there, but how had we both seen it? And that, whoever it was, they were still down there, and had deliberately hidden from us. Not easy, but not impossible, especially if they did a whole Bugs Bunny routine and kept dashing out of sight. We weren't exactly forensic in our search, but again, this person had high-vis strips on their jacket. We didn't tell the others anything until a week or so later, and we just got on with the rest of the trip. I know I was up the whole night worrying something sinister was going on, and I later found out Derek had gotten up more than once to scan the area with a flashlight, which he admitted only made him panic more, because it made him feel a bit Blair Witchy. But that was it. Who did we see? Did we see anyone? If it had been just me who spotted it, I'd probably have let it go by now. but it's one of those things Derek and I always bring up. Hell, maybe it's one of the reasons Derek kept in touch. We think about it a bit differently. The whole thing nags me that I'll never get to find out what was going on. Derek always tells it like a spooky campfire story, but he keeps saying he's glad he never found out. Maybe he's right. The sun is rising, and whatever JJ saw down there apparently decided not to come get us. The jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to everyone who sent in stories or gave me permission to narrate theirs. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts about the stories I've narrated, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to make sure the like button is fully charged and well within its data allowance. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description, and I would love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then, may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.